In his chapter on cross-bearing in the classic book, The Cost of Discipleship, Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, people can shake off the burdens laid on them, but doing so does not free them at all from their burdens. Instead, it loads them with a much heavier, unbearable burden. They bear the self-chosen yoke of their own selves. That was written some 80 years ago, but it is still true in our own time and location. We live in a world that tells us to be free of anything that compromises our happiness. But we discover again and again that we still carry the burden of ourselves. Back in October, the radio program 1A hosted a conversation about the rising popularity of the self-care industry. The opening of the segment featured different YouTube stars and Instagram personalities, women who are experts at self-care and help others to discover how to take better care of themselves. And so it opened, this is what one of them had to say. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. It means today is Self-Care Sunday. I don't know about you guys, but I love to spend my Sundays doing absolutely nothing. I just want to spend the day to take care of myself and take care of my home, clean, and just get ready for the week ahead. The host then goes on and interviews different folks who are experts in the self-care world about how you need to build a self-care routine in order to handle the trials and difficulties that come up throughout the course of the week. And then they dive even deeper to talk about how the self-care industry has been pretty much hijacked by the cosmetic industry, so that now any kind of hand cream or makeup product or yoga class or moisturizer or conditioner is now an act of self-care to help you to handle life, to do whatever you need to do in order to be you. People can shake off the burdens laid on them, but doing so does not free them at all from their burdens. Instead, it loads them with a heavier, more unbearable burden. They bear the self-chosen yoke of their own selves. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported recently that in our country, we've reached the highest levels in a decade of stress, anger, and worry. That's based on a Gallup poll of 150,000 Americans. So even though we're spending all this money and time and popularity is rising with self-care and with mindfulness, we're still seeing growing rates of stress, worry, and anger, the very things that self-care is supposed to prevent us from feeling. Why? Well, if Dietrich Bonhoeffer's theological declaration is right, the obsession with ourself might actually be the problem. Another illustration. Writer Agnes Callard wrote an article recently called "Who Wants to Play the Status Game?" And she says in the article that when we are getting to know somebody, we play two games. This is after the initial sort of who are you, where are you from, what do you do for a living, that sort of thing. So think second or third conversation with somebody that perhaps might be a potential friend or partner in life. Callard says we play two games in that deepening level of relationship. And one is called the importance game, and the other one is called the leveling game. The importance game is played in conversation by subtle references to wealth, talent, accomplishment, and connections. I was talking to Dan the other day. You know Dan, right? He works for the paper. We've been real good friends for years. I'm thinking about redoing the bathroom. And I don't want to spend a lot of money, but there is no way I am buying my new sink from Lowe's. I just can't stand that prefab stuff, right? What's Nathan doing after graduation? Did he get into his top college choice? How were his SAT scores? Have you heard back about those scholarships yet? Do you need me to keep giving examples? The importance game manifests itself in this need to outperform those around us. It's driven by that inner monologue that actually I'm not worth anything, and so I have to meet some kind of external marker in order for my life to have value. It at least needs to exceed the value that your life has. And some of you are sitting here thinking, oh yes, I know this game. I hate this game. I do not want to play this game. It's horrible. So for you, maybe the leveling game comes more naturally. That's the other one. This is what Callard says about the leveling game. She says that is where we performatively share feelings of stress, inadequacy, or weakness, or express discontent with the powers that be, or hone in on a source of communal outrage, frustration, or oppression. Can you believe that new vacation policy from corporate? Are they just trying to get us all to turn in our resignations and quit? Oh, couldn't even get dressed today. This is my third day in yoga pants. This mom thing is no joke, am I right? Y'all probably don't even want me around. I always just bring everybody down with all my problems and disappointments in life. Listen, I'm just so busy. Carpools, sports, lessons, work, home projects, pets, you know how it is. It's two games. The importance game, where without saying it, we try to prove how much worth we have by what we're doing. And the leveling game, where we try to downplay our importance and say, we're all just the same, and I'm really good at being the same as you. Callard wisely examines that both games, which one we choose to play, comes from how we're oriented to the world that is around us. In the importance game, we believe that our individual worth and value come by what we attain or we achieve. It is worth earned by striving. While the leveling game is based on the idea that you have value intrinsic to you simply because you exist. We're all the same and nobody's better than anybody else, and we don't need to strive. In fact, let's rebel against striving and work to show just how we're not good actually at anything or even competent. Callard then concludes her article saying, there's a philosophical conundrum at the root of all this. Morality requires we maintain a safety net at the bottom that catches everyone. The alternative is simply inhumane. But we also need an aspirational target at the top so as to inspire us to excellence, creativity, and accomplishment. In other words, we need worth to come for free, and we also need it to be acquirable. And no philosopher has yet figured out how to construct a moral theory that allows us to say both of those things. And when I finished that article, immediately what came into my head was the title of this old Southern gospel song. You can look it up later. George Jones has a pretty good recording. The song's called I Know a Man Who Can. Here's how the refrain goes, and you have to sing it in a gospel style. Some call him Savior, the Redeemer of all men. I call him Jesus, for he's my dearest friend. If you feel that no one loves you and your life is out of hand, well, I know a man who can. Here's what Jesus does that I guess no other philosopher of moral thinking has ever thought of. Jesus teaches that every human life has value and worth because he's a Jew. And the most basic teaching of Judaism is that every single human creature is made in the image of God and is therefore worthy to be honored as someone whom God loves. That's Jesus' starting place. He takes that from the leveling game. We have value simply because we exist. That's where he starts. But then you heard it today, that he tells those, if anyone wants to be my follower. That's an important if. Jesus doesn't require you to be his follower. He doesn't coerce you into being his follower. You have value because you exist. The safety net is there. But in the call, he also gives us something aspirational. Deny yourself. Take up the cross and follow me. For anyone who wants to save their life will lose it, but those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Aspire, Jesus says. Aspire to lose yourself. Give yourself away. Die to the importance game and the leveling game. Abandon self-care Sunday. Lay down the burden of the self we are so obsessed with in our country and pick up the cross instead. You'll actually find that the cross is a much lighter burden. Bonhoeffer again says, self-denial means knowing only Christ, no longer knowing oneself. It means no longer seeing oneself, only him who is going ahead, no longer seeing the way which is too difficult for us. Self-denial says only, he is going ahead, hold fast to him. I have a photograph on the wall in my office. It was a gift. It's a picture of a headstone that's in Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond. The headstone that's carved is a young girl, elementary school-aged girl. She's got her hair in a ponytail. You only see her from the back, and she's kneeling, and her arms are out as far as they can go, and they're clinging to the crossbeam of a cross. And as you look at the stone carving, you can't tell where the girl's face ends and the cross begins. The stone comes together right where that occurs. It's a visual representation of this image of self-denial. No longer seeing ourselves or hoping to develop and cultivate our self-image. It's entirely a life of clinging to the cross of Jesus as our only purpose and as our only hope, dying to the self so that we can rise by God's love and grace. It is truly an impossible possibility that only Jesus can make so. I don't know if you saw this last week, but there was a Democratic presidential debate in South Carolina. You really couldn't hear anything that anybody was saying because they were all talking over each other. But finally, at the end of the debate, they asked actually an interesting question, finally. The question of each of the candidates on the stage was, what's a motto that you live by? And so here it was, the last chance to play either the importance game or the leveling game. for the candidates running for president. They can either say, I'm just one of you, nobody any better, and play the leveling game, or they could say, my life has been cultivated to this very moment, and I'm the one who should be the next president of the United States for these reasons. The importance game. The motto that they choose was which game they were going to play, and so there are a variety of responses to that question. And I was watching them answer this, and I just wondered if Jesus was on that stage and was asked what the motto was that he lived by, I think he would just look completely befuddled. Because Jesus doesn't have to have a motto. Because Jesus doesn't have a sense of the self that he has to cultivate. Jesus' entire life is the embodied will of God for the world. And his goal is to invite others to make that will their life too. Deny yourself. Take up the cross and follow me. For anyone who wants to save their life will lose it. But those who lose their life for my sake will find it. It's not a motto. It is an impossible possibility, an impossible way to live. But I know a man who can.